Hi Aquarius, welcome to your July 2020 Astro Alchemy report. It's Raina here, and I was just noticing when I was looking at the Capricorn transits that are occurring in July that this is your 12th house. And I was thinking, I wonder how many Aquarians have felt like their lives got really intense. I mean, you could say back since 2008, I mean, that's when Pluto went into Capricorn, but even like within the last year or two when Saturn was in Capricorn, because Saturn's going back in Capricorn. It went into your sign for a few months just recently. Sorry about the train. I think I'm going to let it pass. Okay, train. I knew it was a commuter train. But yeah, so because now that I think about it, when it's in your own sign, you might not think it's much of a party either. But I don't think that that is necessarily true of Aquarius, because Saturn is actually one of your rulers along with Uranus. So it seems more like you would be acclimated to what it represents. But also, I just think that it's not what people make it out to be. However, in the 12th house, it can be even the dark night of the soul, you know, if you take it to the extreme, that some people may feel like they are going through a crisis. However, even though it is going back into the 12th house, it's going to be retrograding. So I think that the full-on effect of that is you're going to be spared that through the end of September, when it finally goes direct. And then it's direct in the 12th until about mid-December. Remember, though, that it's going to depend on your exact degree of sun or rising in Capricorn. I mean, in Aquarius, for this to be fully known. So it will vary from person to person. But it's something that you have already dealt with. So when it goes retrograde, you may be faced, maybe this is another test that has to do with something karmic. Saturn is a karmic planet in the 12th house. Hello, that's the karmic house. That's the house of past lives. So even in the form of a person. And because of this, you have to be willing to really face it and not run away from it. Actually, I got a little bit distracted because I was thinking of Gemini, and that's where Venus retrograded. That's what sign Venus retrograded in. And of course, that's a transit that is from June. And if you're watching or listening to this in June before June 25th, then Venus is still retrograding. So this is occurring in your 5th house of romance, and therefore this may be somebody, an ex-love coming back into your life, and maybe this person you have a soul contract with, you are twin flames with, you are a soulmate to. The 5th house is not committed partnership, but it is love, and it can be somebody that you met maybe almost very randomly, but now you realize when you have heard from them or you have contacted them that there's more to this than just some kind of random encounter. So just keeping that in mind, in Saturn in the 12th house can be something that you need to do. That, you know, I think of Saturn as discipline, maybe a spiritual discipline that you've kind of slacked off on. Now, you may slack off while Saturn is retrograding. You might feel like, is this really even necessary? But you want to do those kinds of inner work, because remember that the chart or the astrology wheel is never ending. A circle has no beginning or end. So Saturn will eventually go into the 1st house. So it's starting that new Saturn cycle in your 1st house. And you want to prepare for it on the cosmic level spiritual level where you are kind of maybe getting these practices down that are of a spiritual nature, because then they can affect you in the material sense, which the first house can represent. It's the body, it's the, the conscious self, the part of yourself that you're well aware of. And it's also a new cycle. So, sometimes I think of the 12th house as the womb. I think I read that somewhere. And that makes perfect sense to me, that it's birthing something, some new cycle. So on the 5th, we're having a lunar eclipse at 13 degrees of Capricorn. So there again, that house. I've been talking about how some Aquarians, or, some people of each sign are going to experience this in the sign before the one that you would think. So for some of you, this is going to fall in that 12th house, but for some of you, this is going to fall in the 11th house. I was saying after 13 degrees of Capricorn, so 14 to 29 degrees of, I keep saying Capricorn, Aquarius, but in fact, it may not be that exact situation, because that's the equal house system, and I was kind of forgetting that. That's more for the solar, for the people who are listening to this for their sun in Aquarius. For your rising Aquarius, you must have gotten your chart if you know what your rising sign is. So go check your chart and see what the degree of your rising sign is in Aquarius, and then you'll be able to see where this lunar eclipse falls. If it's in your 12th house, it's going to be a place where you're able to let go of old demons, habits that have held you back. This can actually be a wonderful thing, because there's kind of almost like this effortless quality about it. This is the house of self-undoing. And some of these things, why do people do what they do? Well, the 12th house can be repressed memories and past lives, or you could call that a form of repressed memories. If a person doesn't know, most people don't remember their past lives, or only snippets of it. And therefore, there are things called samskaras that follow them from one life to the other, which just means grooves or impressions, or you could just say like mental impressions, which means that the person has habitual tendencies in that area. And we all have our own road to hoe. Our own hose to... No, the thing is that the 12th house, there's an unconscious quality of it. There's a dreamlike quality. So it's not something where people may be very aware on kind of in that mundane mindset. And it can feel very vague and almost like unreal. And so this is almost to me like grace. Like, I love to read biographies and autobiographies of famous people. And sometimes when it's somebody who has been struggling with an addiction, it is so cool to read how they just woke up one day and they didn't want to indulge in whatever it was. And this isn't certainly not the case of everybody with an addiction. So I'm not saying that, but isn't that amazing that when that happens? And so it's really just about this idea of being able to let go of things that are no longer serving you. And you could have like some amazingly vivid dreams. I don't usually dream, but I'm recording this a few days before the solar eclipse in Cancer. So earlier in June, or actually it's not that early, it's actually the 3rd week of June. So, and I think that the reason I have been dreaming is because the energy is getting much more intense. And so I do think that July is going to be a bit more mellow. There really aren't that many changes here, but one thing that we do have is that lunar eclipse that can be a standout in terms of some of the transits. Mercury goes direct on the 12th at 5 degrees of Cancer. So for you, Aquarius, I guess this is your 6th house. So this is where the retrograde was, in the 6th house. And this is where the sun is as well as the month begins. So this is a very practical house for you. And if you have been looking for a job and you've been like, you feel like you just sent your resume into a black hole, maybe it got somehow not discarded necessarily, but overlooked, and things will right themselves perhaps around that date. Technology getting a lot better, but this could be work-related, communication with the office if you do work for somebody else. This can be like having some sort of misunderstanding with coworkers that gets resolved. Mercury goes out of its shadow around the 30th, so there might be still some stuff happening between the 12th and the 30th in terms of everything not being 100%, but just it going direct is everything to me. Mars is in Aries, and because you're Aquarius, this is a harmonious type of an aspect, a sextile. So this is coming from the 3rd house. Mars is in the 3rd. This can be like, to me, this is almost like warrior-like energy in the form of mental or communication stuff. So whatever else is going on in your life, and remember that you rule the 11th house, Aquarius, which in part can be things like social activism. So this may be making the flyers or public speaking with a defiance in your voice and all of that stuff. And just being very rebellious with your words. And this can also be fighting with siblings, having some kind of conflict with siblings. Mars can bring, or conflicts with neighbors. 3rd house can be your neighbors or the local environment. On the 20th, we have a black moon at 28 degrees of Cancer. A black moon is the 2nd new moon in a month, and just like a blue moon is the 2nd full moon in a month. And this is not within the same calendar month. This is in the same 30-day period, I should say. So just like that solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Cancer, this is another piece to the puzzle of Cancer transits, and this is at 28 degrees of Cancer on the 20th. And from my reading, it says that it's the beginning of a new cycle that lasts, or that spans 2.5 years until the next black moon appears. So set your intentions for longer range goals that are, able to be attainable within a couple of years, and who knows what could happen. This is going to be in that 3rd house, so it can even be like maybe you want to write a novel and you want to take your sweet time. Let's say it's a historical novel you want to research, or even like nonfiction, and you have to do research and annotating and all that stuff. Perhaps there's some kind of a course of studies that is not necessarily related to a university. That would be more the 9th house, the opposite house, but more of a skills building, like a 2-year internship or program. Maybe it's connected to holistic health, who knows? And it's something that you're getting involved with, or some spiritual pursuit, becoming a shaman's apprentice. Now, again, this is also because Saturn is in the 12th house. So Saturn wants to, create structure. Well, it's trying to create structure in a house that is about dissolving structure. So it's kind of like building a house on sand. But the one thing that you can do when you're doing spiritual disciplines is that you're building, you might be building a house on sand, but you decide, hey, I don't need the house. I can just sit in the sand and meditate. So on the 22nd, we have the sun going into Leo. And again, this is another, I mean, it's an opposition because it's your opposite sign, but it's a compatible sign to you, a compatible element of fire. And so the sun going into your 7th house is very romantic and can brighten up your relationship, make it more warm, you know, more affectionate, more positive. So there will be subsequent transits to that house, including Venus, and Venus is a little bit delayed because of the retrograde, but you have that to look forward to. So I hope that you enjoyed this, Aquarius. If you'd like a private reading, the link is below. Have a great July. Take care. Bye.